Okay, I think we're rolling again. What's going on, everybody? Captain Cody Davis here for the second episode of the Tight Splice Charters podcast. We are sitting down here to do another one this evening. And I just want to start this episode out by saying thank you to all of you who not only tuned into the first episode, but for everybody who reached out to me with all the positive feedback, just all the positive feedback I received between the last one and tonight. Has been great. I had a lot of local anglers come up to me at the boat ramp or at the tournament weigh-in the other day, and just people texting me, reaching out from out of state, out of town that watch my channel, and really liked the first episode. And I had a lot of fun filming it. If you say you got to sit down and talk about fishing for an hour, you don't got to twist my arm. I'm your number one draft pick for that. So I look forward to making as many of these as we can, along with growing my YouTube channel as a whole and trying to get some actual fishing content out to you guys. It's just been, things have not gone my way when it comes to a GoPro or video camera on a bass boat and me fishing. It just hasn't panned out, which we'll get into. But it is what it is. I'm working on it. Hopefully you'll see some of that more to come. And when it comes to my scheduled programming for this podcast, I don't have one yet. I really want to try and do one every 2 weeks. It's probably been about 2 weeks since my last one. I tried to do one in the Georgia woods this past week, sitting just off to the side with Breezy, but she had deer on her mind. There's a couple deer that are driving her crazy, and she was like, I'm not going to give a good interview because I don't even care about a bass right now. I want to talk about this deer. And I have not heard from her in the past 2 hours, so the deer might be on the ground. I'm praying that's where she's at, but if not, she'll eventually get them. So I don't know what the schedule is going to be, but I feel like over time here we'll get into a little routine, and I'm going to try and do it about every 2 weeks. And as far as just my fishing videos in general, there is no schedule for that. I'm going to post them as soon as they come out, but that hasn't been going my way, which we'll get into here, I'm sure, in this podcast. So I do have a nice cold beverage here, and a lot of you might think it's some spiced rum with some Coke or some bourbon or something. It's actually a nice tall styrofoam glass or styrofoam cup filled with ice water. And the reason for that is today is November 26th or 27th, and typically around this time, I'm not running my trips. I don't meet my customers on the lake until about at least 8 o'clock, if not 10. And we usually fish through the day. And usually our first few words to each other are, man, I'm glad we were not out there first thing this morning, because it's usually blowing 25 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour. And it's usually in the 40s by the time I get to the ramp. And it was usually in the high 30s or low 40s in the morning. And the reason I push my trips back is because I typically don't run double trips. Like, it's your day, so I don't have to worry about getting back to the ramp at a certain time. So these are Florida bass we're fishing for. So when it's cold, the later in the day, once the sun gets up, are the better hours. So I don't want to give you 2 or 3 stupid, pointless hours of fishing in the morning. And I don't like being freezing cold. But this year, for whatever, today, it was, like I said, November 26th, I believe today is, and it was August. I don't know if you guys can see my face, but I am extremely sunburnt. It was hot. I don't know what the air temperature was, but I'm sure it was in the high 80s. Brutal sun. And for the first time in my guide career, we ran out of bottled water. I am an advocate for having tons of water on the boat. A lot of you that fish with me know that. And we flat ran out at like 1 o'clock today. It's hot. So I'm trying to get rehydrated, and it isn't working. That's one thing about Florida, guys, is the weather is just, it's very intense. When it's cold, I do not care what anyone says. I was just in Nashville in 20 degrees. I was just up in Bryson City in the snow. I've been here. I've been there. When it comes to heat, I've been there. Florida weather is ridiculous. And hot is hot, but Florida cold, it's a different cold. I'm just telling you, it is. I don't care what anyone says. 50 degrees in Florida feels like 35 anywhere else. And I mean that. And when I say Florida, I'm really talking like Lake Okeechobee and stuff. But I think because we're so flat, the wind really gets to you here. I don't know. But same thing with the heat. The heat is just so intense. Like, you're sweating so bad and just getting beat up. So that's my tip for you. When you're come down here in the wintertime, I don't care if you're from Jersey and you're used to it, or I don't care if you live in Colorado and you go skiing in a tank top and Sophie shorts like these people tell me. Dress warm. I had great guys on the boat today, actually from South Georgia. They were Lanier Hammers, and I had a great time out on the lake with them and enjoyed fishing with them. And I could tell that they knew what they were doing because as soon as I got out of the truck, I had a jacket on and jeans. I regret the jeans, okay, because it was extremely hot. But the ride out was a little cool. And the guy looked at me and said, "Do I need my jacket or anything?" And I knew he was from up north, further than we are. But don't try to be the tough guy. All right. If you're here in the winter, bring cool weather gear. If you're here in the summertime, be smart. Wear a long sleeve shirt. Don't come down here to get your tan and get your color because you're going to get sun poisoning, like I've had many of my customers get. So that's my tip there. But yeah, it's it is hot out there, and I heard now my customer today told me tomorrow there's supposed to be literally no wind, which is A, going to make the fishing even more difficult, and B, it's going to be even more hot and disgusting out there. But we'll see what we can run into. The fishing today, I don't know. We caught a bunch of fish. We caught fish pretty much everywhere we fished, but never got a big bite. My partner Kelly was out there, and he ended up catching 2 5-pounders, but I think he only had like 4 bites all day, 5 bites all day. Oh, he had a bunch. He ended up fishing one spot where he got a bunch of bites. I think he said he caught like 10 fish in a row, doing what he likes to do, which was cool. But everyone I talked to said they were catching fish all day, but no one really came across any big ones. Which today was not big fish conditions, like I like to call it. Slick, calm, hot, still high water. Again, these fish are doing all different types of stuff, which leads us into the tournament we had last weekend. I had a lot of people reaching out, asking me about how the Roland Martin Marine Series tournament went. And I think I mentioned to you guys last time and that we were supposed to fish a tournament Saturday and a tournament Sunday. Well, it's wintertime in Florida on Lake Okeechobee, which means, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is a big tip for all of you out of towners. If you're coming to Lake Okeechobee to either if there is a tournament on Lake Okeechobee and you're coming down to fish it, something with the stars and in the galaxy and the way the planets, coincide with each other, it creates this thing so that when there is a tournament on this body of water, the weather goes to absolute hell every time. Every time. I don't know what it is. Literally, we're a week post the tournament, and it's literally beautiful and hot and humid out. And Saturday came. Well, I don't remember when I filmed the podcast. I think it was the Thursday night before. It was a Thursday night before the tournament. So the next day, I had some great anglers in the boat. I've had them before. Shout out to Joe. And damn it, Joe, I can't remember your cousin's name if you're listening to this. Crap. Anyway, Joe's cousin, we're going snook fishing. We're going to go. Stripe a guy. But I had they were awesome guys, and it was blowing. All right, I picked them up in the morning, and it was blowing sustained 25 right out of the north, to the point where my customer is an offshore guy, and he said, if I came out of my harbor up north in New York and it looked like this, I'd be turning around. It was nasty. So we were very limited on where we could fish. We ran around, tried to fish, and I don't think we had a bite at 11 o'clock. I ended up pulling an audible, running to an area where I really didn't have confidence. And we rolled in there, laid the boat down. First thing I noticed, there wasn't a boat in sight anywhere, which was a little alarming, but we started casting. And it wasn't 5 minutes, and we had 6 or 7 bites. On a whopper plopper, on a chatterbait, on a worm, on a spook. Fish were feeding in this area. And they weren't big, but we were catching fish, so we were happy. They were catching fish. It had been so slow all morning, and we were out of the wind. We just found this little pocket, so we pulled down and fished very slow. And we caught fish in there for an hour or so, and then I kept telling my guys, I'm like, you guys gotta find the big bite for me, so I know if it's worth it to come back in here tomorrow. You guys are pre-fishing for me. And my buddy Joe throws a chatterbait up into these pads and pulls out one 6 pounds, 6.5 pounds, whatever it was. And then I think I pulled off like a 4 pounder or something. And we kind of just caught some fish, and the way that my practice was going, that was some of the best stuff I had seen. I mean, we were really struggling. Kelly was struggling. So day ends. I say, me and Kelly agree we're going to go to that spot where I left them, and we're just going to see what happens, and we're just going to junk fish from there. We got 2 days. Well, the next day we get to the ramp, and I was very surprised that the Roland Martin Marine team didn't cancel the event. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be weather-wise and wind-wise. And everyone was smart. Typically when they call your boat numbers and you're running that lake, it's Fast and Furious 7 out there. Everyone's ripping and racing. It was rough, and I think a lot of people knew the severity of it. So the people that took the rim canal to run up north or south did that, and then a lot of us that were trying to fish mid-lake who ran the lake, it was just a nice convoy of boats. No one did anything crazy or stupid and tried to run people over and all that because they knew. I mean, it was nasty. It was very nasty out there, but everyone made it work. Everyone got back safe and sound, and it was a good call. I mean, it was fishable. You just had to be really, really cautious, which everyone was. And me and Kelly got to our fish, and I think it was 8 minutes, and Kelly had a limit in the boat by himself, throwing a white chatterbait. There's a couple other guys in there doing some other stuff, throwing some moving baits. Long story short, played around in there for like 3 hours. We're catching fish, swim jig and a chatterbait, nothing big. The wind starts to die down. We run to this spot Kelly caught fish in like 2 weeks prior. We didn't know if we'd be able to fish it because it'd be too rough. It was rough, but long story short, we pulled 14 pounds out of there real quick. And on our way back, fished around, flipped some stuff. I think we caught one that might have helped. There's like an ounce or something. So we ended up with like just under 14 pounds. So what we were like, are we going to be in check range or are we not going to be? And we had to lock through to weigh in. Usually Raymond, manager of Roland Martin Marina, is able to pull some strings and get the locks open, but the lake is so high, they were not able to leave the locks open. We had to go through the whole locking procedure, and it took like an hour and a half to get through. It was a complete debacle, but it is what it is. Everyone was played nice in the locks. There was no altercations or everything. And we ended up not getting a check. But looking at the weights, it was really, I don't know, it was puzzling. 26 pounds won it. My buddy Don DeMont, great guy. Him and his son got it done, and it was super cool to see them win. Mike Slip, I forget. I don't know who the second place guys were. If you're watching this, I apologize. Third place, my buddy Mike Slippy. And just like seeing the weights, it was like 26. Don't kill me in the comments if I'm wrong. I want to say it was like 26, 25, 25, 22, 21, 20, and then it just dropped into the teens. But the weights were really stacked in that 15 to 18 pound mark. So we didn't get a check. I'm not sure where we even ended up. But we kind of devised a small game plan for the next day, but the whole time we're looking at these phones saying it's going to blow harder tomorrow and rain. And long story short, about 2 a.m., the Weather Channel or whoever, small craft advisory on Lake Okeechobee. It was supposed to gust to 30. It was just raining sideways and ended up canceling the event. Smart move on the Roland Martin Marine staff to do that. I was 90% sure they were going to do it. So I got to sleep in, wake up, mow my lawn, get all my stuff done, and then I headed off to Georgia for the week for Thanksgiving. But getting back to like the tournament, I'm not, and I don't know how everyone, because you got to remember, a lot of times you have your one tournament and then everyone kind of, BS's afterwards, after the event, and you kind of hear some stuff. I saw this person here, or, you talk to the person who caught him. I caught him doing this. You were in there this week, and everyone just, we kind of share information, but we had a tournament to fish the next day. So everyone was hush-lipped. We weighed our fish, went up, congratulated everybody, and me and Kelly went and put it on the trailer. So I didn't get to talk to a lot of people about how fish were caught and stuff. It's funny though, where we caught our fish, the majority of our fish, I think 3 or 4 of the ones we weighed in, I saw the winner, Don, uh, just inside of me. Now, again, that doesn't mean he caught them there, and I didn't ask him. But he told me I think they only caught like 10 fish all day. They just got the right ones. And that's how I figured it was going to happen. I mean, I didn't think anyone was really going to light them on fire, especially the people that won it, or if you did win it. It was going to be a grind. There was a lot of boats stacked on top of each other in certain areas. I've got tournaments coming up, so I'm not going to list where the areas were, but it fished small for a couple reasons. One, a lot of people found the same groups of fish. You know what I mean? But on top of that, with 25-mile-an-hour winds and a 16.5-foot lake, the lake is almost cut in. There's really only like 4 areas that you can concentrate in. So you're making 90% of the lake unfishable. So everyone's fishing what is fishable, and everyone was stacked on top of each other. Me and Kelly were lucky. We really didn't run into any crowds until the end of the day, literally the last stretch we fished, because we went to fish it, but it was a stretch where a lot of people on their way back to the weigh-in were stopping for 10 minutes and fishing and pulling out of there. The new people were pulling in. Not that I think it would have mattered, but other than that, we didn't see anybody all day for the most. I mean, we saw people, but we didn't get fished around, and we didn't fish around other people, which was nice. But it was one of those things where it might have been raining and it might have been blowing 25 out of the north. So Friday it was cold. I mean, it was, I don't know. I think it was like in the like 60s all day, low 60s or high 50s, and overcast and just dreary and windy. So it was cold conditions. Fast forward to the next day, it was windy and it was cool in the morning, but it was bright and sunny, and it got warm. I think it got up to the 80s in the middle of the day. So that cold front that we went through the 2 days prior to the tournament, it wasn't enough to really knock them in the dirt. I think the water temp was like 68 or 60. I think it was like, yeah, I think it was 68, 69 degrees tournament morning. So it was still warm. And again, I really think it's not only is the high water dispersing the fish, but the warm water is. There's so many fish doing so many different things right now. And I don't want to sound like a broken record because I feel like I talked about this on the last podcast, but it's the truth. A lot of people were catching them in a certain line, doing a certain thing, but you got fish that are trying to think about spawning. I mean, literally today we caught fish literally in the back, flipping mats. We caught fish on the outside edge, flipping a jig on the outside line. We caught them swim jigging in the middle. We caught them rattle trapping in the trail. I mean, we caught them doing everything. There's literally fish just doing a little bit of everything right now. So it's really hard to get dialed in on a deal. And that's why I think the weights were kind of low. That, and on top of that, obviously, the weather was just horrendous. So I don't know. I don't have video of our tournament because we had 4, but it was funny. We left. I was filming, and we caught I think we had 10 pounds when we left the first spot. And when we got to the second spot, we had so little confidence in that we were even going to get bit there because of the weather, because of it was rolling in there. The water was bad. But we said, I just didn't turn the camera on. And it happened like that. Kelly hooked one on a trap. When it came up and jumped, it spooked a ball of shad. Here they come schooling. I fire a swim jig in there. Boom. Catch like a 3. Reel it in. Put it in the floor. Kelly's culling. Culls a fish. I fire a swim jig back out. Boom. Catch another one that cold. I don't remember how big it was. Kelly's culling. I pick the worm up, throw the worm in there, let it lay on the bottom. Boom. 4.5 pounder eats it. Set the hook on her. But it was just like boom, 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 and then it was over. It was dead. And we caught those 3 or 4 fish or whatever it was, maybe 5 in 6 casts. And I never had time to turn the camera on. Of course, I turned the camera on. The fish stopped biting, but that's the way it usually goes. So there is not a video from the Roland Martins tournament, but I do have a couple off days this week. I'm going to, and we got, so speaking of that, we have the championship coming up, not this weekend, but the next weekend. So I got to be out there pre-fishing, looking around, trying to figure some stuff out. So there will be fishing content coming. I don't know if I can't promise it's going to be good, but there's going to be some coming. So that's the status. Leo Gachobi's just, it's funky right now. People are catching them. The fish are there. It's not like it's funky because it's dead. It's not. People, you can come out here and catch all the fish you want, but dialing it in, it's been difficult. But it's been fun. You can catch them doing all. If I get customers in the boat that want to do something, they want to throw a frog, you can catch them on a frog right now. You want to catch them on a swim bait, you can. Chatterbait, you can. Worm, you can. Spook, you can. So that's kind of neat. But we'll see what happens. I work the next few days and just going to go out there and look around. It's supposed to be hot. As much as, it's not that I want the cold front. I don't want to fish in the wind and the nastiness, but I do want the water temp to kind of go down. I do want the cold front. I don't want to fish in it. I want to fish after it on the upswing when it's coming up. That's the time you want to be here. It just hasn't got cold yet. So these fish are kind of in a funk, but we're catching fish. We're catching fish. Everyone's having fun. No one's complaining. And, I'm not a cold weather person, so it is what it is. And, it's funny. So Sunday, I did my house chores. Monday morning at 4 a.m., me and my parents, we hit the road and we headed up to South Georgia to my in-laws' hunting property. And we spent the week up there deer hunting and just hanging out and just stayed up there for Thanksgiving. So I came home yesterday, being Friday. We drove home. Breezy stayed up there, and they're on the coming home in the morning. But it was really weird because I try to relate everything back to fishing, whether it's bass fishing or saltwater fishing or just fishing in general. And I'm very new to deer hunting. It'll never be to me what fishing is. I truly don't think so, but I do love it. It's very, I love going and just sitting in the deer stand. I love just watching what they do naturally, because here's the thing that just does it for me when it comes to deer hunting is when one walks out, whether it's a fawn, a doe, or a giant buck, whether it's a raccoon or a bobcat or a finch in a tree, you're sitting there and those animals you're looking at have no idea you're there, right? That's the goal. And if you do it right, you can learn so much because they're acting the way they've been acting and do act in the wild for the past billion years. So when you're sitting in that deer stand and you're getting pictures, or my father-in-law will get pictures from this food plot. And he tells me, hey, like these deer are coming through there. You might want to go sit in this stand. You go sit in there. And it's not like, yep, I saw them. It's always like, well, where did they come from? Are they coming from the back? Are they coming from the side? Are they walking down the road? Are they crossing the road? Are they are they being weary? Are they pop? And they're so smart. I get it. I get the whole whitetail deer enthusiasts. I get it. They're just so damn smart. But what's cool is like you could sit back and watch that animal behave the way it does and the way they do, and it dials you in a little more. You could tell where they're coming from. Okay, well, I want to hunt there on this wind, or I want to do this, or I need to be there in the mornings because in the afternoons they're going here. And we can't do that with bass. Can't do that with fish in general. And no, it's not going to, it doesn't make deer hunting any easier at all. If anything, it might make it harder. But I just wish there was a way we could do that with bass, where you could see what they do. You could see how they move, when they move. And there's just not really a way to do it unless someone donated millions of satellite tags. And I'm talking about Leo Gachobi, but just in general, but what they do. But something else that's kind of cool is, and I was thinking about this with fishing. So it was like, I don't know what night it was, Wednesday. And all the apps said that it was a 0-star night The deer aren't going to be walking. It was hot for South Georgia. It was really warm. Conditions were just horrible. And there were 4 or 5 of us hunting that afternoon, spread out all over the property. I was, well, I don't even remember where I hunted that night. Anyway, I hunted. There were some of us deep in the woods of the property. There were some of us out on these, like, basically hunting shooting lanes, these roads where these deer were crossing. There were people on food plots, and maybe one person saw a doe, or I might have seen a spike or something that night, but that was it. No one saw any activity. The cameras were silent. I mean, there was no cameras going off, nothing. And it was Friday. No, it was, I don't remember. I'm going crazy. Anyway, Thursday. I think it was Thanksgiving night. And I remember we went to the processor because they do a doe contest, biggest doe contest. You put $20 in, and whoever shoots and brings to him the biggest doe for the weekend gets the pot. It just helps with doe management and everything like that. And we went there to go donate this money for my brother-in-law. And there were 3 or 4 trucks there dropping off deer, and there was probably 10 or 12 deer laid on the ground. And what's going through my mind is, we're in South Georgia, right? A deer processor is probably fairly hard to find down here where I live because we don't have deer, and the ones we do are the size of my goat in the backyard. But you're in deer hunting country up here, right? So this is one processor. There's probably dozens upon dozens of him in the nearby area. So these are the people that are just hunting in this general vicinity around him that are using him because he's the closest. And we're 4 miles down the road. So we didn't see anything, but these people did. And there were some some studs that got brought in. And, these people are there just taking their pictures, and we're talking, and you talk to this person, and this person said, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it was slow, but this buck came in chasing a doe. But then you got other people that said, no, there was, these deer were just walking down the road on my property. Or this one was, and it's like, you in these sports, when we're dealing with hunting or fishing, you never know. We think we know. We think we have a pretty good idea, but you never know. When it comes to deer hunting, right? You might think everything's wrong, but you can go sit in that stand and you have just as good of a chance. Literally, I don't care what anyone says. You have just as good of a chance on this day as you did yesterday or the day before that a 200-inch deer walks out and you kill it, and it's the biggest deer of your life and you'll ever kill or you'll ever see. And it can happen that quick. Same thing with bass fishing. Everything can be wrong. The conditions can be wrong. This can all be wrong. And you could have 8 minutes where you catch 25 pounds of fish. And in a tournament, that's what wins it, because no matter what, it's like right now, I don't know what time it is. It's 8:00 at night or something. And let's just say tonight was a Wednesday, today's a Saturday, but if it was a Wednesday night at 8:30 at night and I went to Winn-Dixie right now, or Publix, or whatever shop, grocery store you guys shop at, it's probably going to be fairly empty, right? Everyone's home. It's a weeknight. The kids got school. You got work. No one wants to be at the grocery store at 8:30. You've already eaten dinner. You got stuff to do. You're home. Anyone would tell you Wednesday at 5:00, the grocery store is going to be busy, right? It's going to be busy. Or Saturday morning, right? Or even on the weekend. But Wednesday night at 8:30, you're probably going to have the place to yourself. But there's always a few. You never go in there, and yes, most of the people in the area are at home, putting the kids to bed, watching their TV show, eating their ice cream, doing the dishes, getting some last minute work done. But there's always some people that are just on a different schedule, doing different things on a different pattern, and they're at Winn-Dixie doing their grocery shopping. It's the same thing. Yes, with a bass, it's, the cold front. There's always an exception. There's always some. And I was just thinking of that. It's like, it also goes back to someone's always going to catch them. Like you might just be like, man, I didn't find nothing. I can't get bit. I can't do nothing on your lake, meaning like this area these people were hunting. I get it. We're not chasing anything. You can't really make changes when you're deer hunting, but it's all relative. It all kind of coincides together. But when you're on that lake, you could turn that key, you can fire that outboard up, you can run wherever you want. You can do whatever you want to do. That's your game. That's what you want to do. It's your choice. You do what you want. And you could say, man, I got zeroed today. I never had a bite. The bite, it just sucked. It was tough. And then someone comes in with 28 pounds and wins the tournament. So it's one of those things where I don't know, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but it was just so cool. Like in these sports, you never know. You never know what can happen or what will happen. You just got to go. And I talked some of those guys at the process were like, man, I haven't seen anything in 3 days. And these deer walked out, and a lot of them, a lot of these people were shooting does and stuff like that. But at the end of at the end of it, it's like they still saw deer and we didn't. And it goes right back to fishing. Me and Kelly had 13 and a half pounds. We had all the same baits, the same tackle, the same boundary lines. We could fish as these people that caught 25 and 26 pounds. And you can't, especially down here in Florida, which is so cool. Like I mention it all the time. On Lake Gunnersville, there's and I could be butchering this, but I've heard there's like a 2-week window where they spawn. Or there might be 1 or 2 waves of fish that come in and spawn. So everyone knows they're spawning and everyone's fishing for spawning fish. Whereas on Okeechobee, it's like you have fish pre-spawn, post-spawn, and spawning all at the same time. And I might have mentioned this on my last video that I did. I don't remember if I did this in the last podcast, so I apologize in advance if I did. But literally the ABA I won. I caught all my fish post-spawn. I was catching them coming out of a backwater area, throwing a swim jig, and I had 19.20 pounds. And I honestly, looking at my fish when I let them go, I probably should. It looked like I had like 21, but my fish were so thinned out and frail from spawning, and they were just coming off the bed. All right, they were on their way out. They were feeding up, and they were aggressive. And I stayed in one area and was just going back and forth, essentially in front of like a cut, catching them as they were going back out to the main lake. My partner, Kelly, got third, and all 5 of his fish he weighed in, he caught sight fishing locked on beds. All of them. Laid down, picked them off the bed, pitching a beaver to a bed. The guy who got second caught him schooling. Kelly got third or second. I think he got third. And the guy that got second caught them schooling on their way in to go spawn on a trap, a white spinnerbait, and a spook. So there's always exceptions. There's always exceptions. Now on our lake, obviously, it's got its own playbook. There's nothing like this lake right here behind me. But I'm just, if any of you that are listening from out of state or out of town or fishing other lakes, you hear all these pros talk about, well, that's a pre-spawn deal, or that's a post-spawn deal mainly, or that's this or that's that. There's exceptions to every rule in this sport. Because we're not talking about a law, and we're not talking about it's like Kevin Van Dam said it best once. All this is based on science that's far from exact, and that's the best way to put it, because there's always exceptions. And today, talking to my guys, were asking questions, and it's like the more time you're on the water, the more like you say, like, yeah, typically, they don't, the frog deal, you don't throw the frog in the wintertime out here. You come down here end of March, May, or April, May, June, July, when it's hot, and they'll smoke the frog. And then I say, but today the water's 80 degrees and it's a little bit of wind and some clouds. So yeah, they should eat it. And I remember last year in February, I was catching them in 58-degree water on the front. It's one of those things. It's just, there's always exceptions. So I always try to look at things I can compare to fishing to make my mental game at fishing better. And those deer, like I said, just, I wish we could watch the way bass behave, but not only that, just looking at that app saying it was going to be bad. We didn't see any deer. Our cameras weren't going off with any deer. We didn't kill anything. And other people were just laying it to them, and big deer. And talking to them, they're hunting right down the road from us. I mean, it's the same playing field at the end of the day. And I don't know. So I always look at that like I did with Kelly even on Saturday, trying to stay mentally strong. Yes, it's windy. Yes, it's cold. Yes, I know it's tough, but you never know. You got to just keep your head in it and just fish. You're not going to catch them. I can tell you one thing: you're not going to catch them if you don't go fishing. So I just try to look at things I can compare to make my mental side of bass fishing stronger as often as I can. So I thought that was kind of cool. So just always remember that. Just if it feels good to you and you have confidence in it, give it a shot. The book might say it's wrong. The conditions might say, no, that's not what you need to do. But if you're confident in doing it and it feels right to you, that's the cool part of this game. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. And it's just like anything. Like when you talk about tournaments and how it's going to be won and what's going to happen, more times than not, the complete opposite of what you think's going to win is what wins it. Or it's just what it does. I'll tell you again, in Roland's Saturday, I would not pick this poppin' frog up. I said it's November. I'm in a jacket. It's cool. The water was like 68. It's just too cold. It's high sun. They're not going to eat it. And I get to the weigh-in, and I'm talking to my buddy Justin Morgan, who's probably one of the best frog fishermen on the lake. And this goes back to just what we were talking about. He had like 18 pounds, which to him is junk. And we're talking. And he said, yeah, we should have had 29 today. I said, really? He said, yeah, I lost 2 big ones. I said, oh, like big? He's like, yeah. And I said, on the frog? Again, he didn't want to really give me a clear answer because he's fishing up against me tomorrow, we thought. And he goes, yeah. He said, I'm not bullshitting you. He said, and then he says to me, one was like 8 pounds and the other one was big. Well, he's like 10, 11 pounds. And his partner was like, I saw them. It was a legit 10, 11 pounder. And for those of you who are going to, if there's one person on the lake that's going to tell me he lost a 10 pounder and I'm going to think it was a 10 pounder, it's this guy. And I want to say he only had 3 bites all day. So again, there's days we go out there and we throw this frog and we catch 60, 70, 40, 30, whatever. But we get a lot of bites on the frog when it lines up. But the conditions didn't essentially line up for the frog. But Justin knows, as do I. But I just, again, let my mental side get to me and I overthink it. This is the best big fish bait on Lake Okeechobee, bar none, is a popping frog. Name a better one. Over the past 5 years, if I tell everybody, if there is a bag over 32 pounds, 95% of them have come on this. Chris Sherling and Kale and the Nick Kaler. The story I told in the last podcast about Gary Milicevic and them with Papa. It goes on. It goes on and on and on. I watched Jared and Duran catch 36.59 next to me one time on this thing. The giant bags come on this. And it's a great bait because it's a big profile and they can't get a good look at it. So big fish, they come up to it. Not only does it draw them up to it like everyone says a big swim bait does, right? This I use for snook. It's big Savage Gear mullet, but I could throw this in Okeechobee and catch them because we got mullet in the lake for bass. But something like this has a lot of drawing power. Well, so does this thing, chugging across the top, and it not only does it call them to them. A big thing for me, why I think it's the sploosh, it's the pop, it's that profile of that big popper, and it's these feet. And I'm going off on a totally different thing, and then I'm going to come back to what I was going to talk about. But my whole thing is, again, just staring at stuff and analyzing things like what makes this such a good bait? Why do the giant ones can't say no? Why can they not deny this? And I've done videos on this before, but I can think of 0 times when I have caught bass on this bait where they think it's a frog. The last thing any of us want them to think that this is a frog. They don't, not that they don't eat frogs out here, but this excels when they're eating bluegill, when they're eating brim, okay? And throwing this over a brim bed or just fish that are primarily feeding on brim is when this thing goes off. Again, end of March, April, May. That water level starts dropping, the water temperature starts rising, and the bluegill start coming into spawn, and you get those big ones that stay back and want to feed on them. This is the bait. And I think they can't get a good look at it. It's a big profile. And I always tell people, if you've ever seen a bluegill trying to outrun a bass, and I'm not talking a bluegill, I'm talking, a good sized brim. If you ever notice what they do, they fluff out. Okay, they'll swim, and if they get cornered, they'll almost go on their side and they'll expand their dorsal fins, their anal fins, and they'll make themselves look bigger. You look at a bluegill that looks like this when their fins are folded down, but if they put those fins out, not only do they look bigger, but the bass can't swallow them. How often have you guys found bass floating with brim or cichlids or something stuck in their throat? And that's why. It's a defense mechanism. What do you think these feet do, these legs do when you stop popping them? If you stop this frog, those legs just slowly open, and you got 2 of them. And I think they think that's a dorsal fin or a fin, like that's an injured brim and now it's trying to make himself look bigger, and they can't stand it, and they'll hit it. Now, oftentimes we catch them on this, not stopping it, just like you're peacocking in the Amazon. But it's a great bait. But anyway, I digress on that. But again, there's a window, right? There's a time and place where this is the bait to be throwing, but there's exceptions. Okay, warm, hot, overcast, brim, this, that's the time. That's why I did not throw it in the tournament, because the water temp was a little too cold. It was too bluebird. It was really windy, and everything was wrong. But Justin goes out there and loses an 8 and a 10, right? And I believe weighed in like a 6 or a 7 pounder in the tournament or something. I think he said he only had a couple of bites on this, but goes back to deer hunting. Same thing. It's like, yeah, the conditions are wrong, but all I need is one. I need that big buck. Let's just say there's 20 big bucks on your block of woods. I just need one of them to say, why is everyone bedded down? I mean, I'm going for a walk, or I'm going to look for a girlfriend, or I'm going to feed in this food. You just need one to do something different to change your day. And that's, what Justin knew. If let's just say I put this in front of 10 big ones, 10 fish over 6 pounds today. If I get 2 of them to just say, I'm hitting it, and you put them in the boat, you're getting paid. And that's the mindset. Is he's just like, I know I'm in an area that has a lot of big ones, and there's no better way to fool a big one than with this bait, and I have confidence in it. And I know for a fact I'm not going to get a bunch of big bites in here because the water is cold. The brim aren't on the bed. The brim aren't vulnerable. So these fish are kind of feeding on more shiners or shad, or some of the bass are feeding, just thinking about strictly spawning. But all I need is one bass that's really hungry, that just says, you know what, there's a brim, I'm eating it. I'm an opportunistic feeder. Or just to say, you know what, why a brim might have just chased a bass or a brim or a shiner into a pad clump, and he just throws this in there. You know what, I'm right here. Sploosh. So you don't need to go by the big picture in this game. At the end of the day, you can only, like Randall Tharp always said, you can go out and catch 20 pounds and catch 150 fish that day, or you can go catch 30 pounds and only catch 6. If you're only allowed 5, so you can go to the weigh-in and tell people how many fish, that's cool. They don't care. You care about those 5. You only need to bring in 5. So when you really think about that, it's like you want to fish for those 5 biggest bites, because that's what's going to get you paid. That's what's going to win the tournament. So if his partners is throwing a chatterbait or throwing a spinnerbait or throwing a speed worm, where he is getting some more bites, some limit fillers, and has obviously the opportunity to catch a big one. He just says, or a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to throw this. The water's warm enough to where you can have an exception and one will come up and eat that. So always think about that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know where I was going with that. But so that's it. I did throw this today. I threw a frog today. I didn't catch anything on it. But that is a bait primarily out here that you need to just keep in your hand. If you decide to pick it up, it's not like you're going to throw it out there and know instantly. It's kind of like a bait, like a Big Easy or a swim bait out here. If you go through an area that's set up right for it and you throw it in there and you cover some water, they're either going to eat it or they're not. Same thing like flipping mats, in my opinion. I feel like if they're in the mats, you're going to know about it real quick. That frog is not necessarily the case with that. That's something that's almost like you got to devote a lot of time to it, keep it in your hand, but the results can be amazing when they get on that. But, so the deer hunting was cool. I am going to get into deer hunting. I am into it. I sit in the stand just as much as everybody when we're there. I've only killed one deer in my life, but I do love it. It's so cool. It's just so peaceful. It's quiet. And like I said, you're watching these animals behave the way they do it when you're not there. And you just see what they do in the little thing. You learn so much. And I really wish, like I said, going back to it, that we could do that with bass, because I get so many questions about, do the fish live out here? Do they really move in and move out? And you're only going to learn this stuff with time on the water, and you're going to get your assumptions and what you've seen. And I really think they do. I think they do both. I think there's times where the fish are just not feeding. And I think there's times where the fish just aren't there. And it's really funny. Customers will say, guys, we got to go. They're not in here anymore. And then we'll go to another spot and I'll say, guys, we got to go. These fish just aren't feeding. And they'll sit down and say, well, what do you mean by that? What was the difference? What made you say at the last spot they were not here and at this spot they're not feeding? And it's something that I cannot explain to people. I don't know how to explain it. It goes back to time on the water. But the reason I'm so confident in saying it is because it's because I've proven myself right. It's not because I think I'm right, but I've proven it to myself so many times. I was just telling the story today. We were fishing in an area. Me and my buddy Bobby Diaz. Well, we'll start the day before. Me and my brother go fishing. We run by this area and we lay down. I said, this is set up like they should be in here. And we're fishing and we don't catch anything. We leave. On the way back, we stop in there again. We don't catch anything. The next morning, we run. I go fishing with my buddy Bobby. We run. I say, lay down in here. Look at this spot. Look how good it looks. Oh, buddy, this is awesome. This looks so good. We fish it. We don't catch nothing. I think we catch one. I think he catches one on a chatterbait. We leave. We go fish the shoal. We go run up to bird. We punch some mats. We do this. We do that. And we're coming in. And I said, you want to stop at that spot real quick and flip that? Said, sure. Let's lay down in there. And we caught like 2 7s, a 6, a 4, and had a 9-pounder literally chasing, like we were talking, a brim on top of the water, trying to suck it down, and to the point where I was trying to free net it. And we had an amazing afternoon and caught the crap out of them. And I always tell that story about how I hit it 4 or 5 different times in the course of 24 hours. And on the last time we got them, and people ask me, do you think they just moved in or do you think they turned on? And in that one, I wasn't sure. Oh man, that one was, I think they were in there, but I think that time they it wasn't that they turned on or came in. I think they were around, but I think they set up. They set up on all these isolated reeds and just perfect. And I think they were getting ready to spawn. But there's times where here, like I tell people, I think I said it on the last one. If all the ingredients are in place on this lake, you're around fish. I found today there was bait, clean water, there was current, and good bottom. and when I say bait, lots of bait, there's fish there. But why, if there's billions of shad right at their accessible right there to these fish, why do you think you're going to catch them? Maybe they can feed whenever they want. They're full. So it's very hard to catch them. And then there's times like where you go fishing area and you've been catching them, but you just don't get that, like that area where me and Kelly went in and caught them on the chatterbait, and my customer Joe and cousin I can't remember the name of, and I feel real bad. We caught them, and I went in there today and we never had a bite. And I said it to my guys, let's go. I just think I'm not saying they left entirely, but they're not set up how I left them. They moved. I'm not saying they totally left. I don't know if they went in the back of the mats. I don't know if they went to the outside or so. I don't know where they went, but I'm not going to waste your guys' time, or your paying time, trying to figure a puzzle out. I'll come back on my own time, and I'm going to go. I know there's fish in there. I'm going to see what they did, where they moved, where they go when it warms up. And we went to another area. We went to where me and Kelly caught them in the tournament, and where we caught the next spot and caught some fish and whatnot. But it's just one of those things where, like, I didn't see the bait. I didn't see the bait in there like we had seen in the tournament and the day before. The grass was different. I don't know if because of the water receding back out because the wind died, right? It was blowing 25 for 2 days in there. And then the receding water moved some stuff around. I'm not sure, but I just got the feeling that not only were it wasn't that they weren't biting. These fish moved. These fish left. And then there's other times where they're just not biting, like the bait spot. There's bait. I don't think they're just not biting. They're fed up. They're full. And yeah, they're not going to bite. But the way to figure that out now, there's times where, like, if you're in a tournament situation and you're in that area where they're not biting, but the day before you caught 28 pounds in there, you might want to, like, maybe leave, but come back. Or if you have enough confidence to sit there all day, that's great. But on a spot like that, there's times me and Kelly will leave and come back 4 times throughout the day. Like, all right, this is dead. Let's leave. Go fish around here, and if the wind starts blowing, we'll come back and check it. Come back. The wind starts blowing after now. We come back, fish it. It's still not biting. All right, we're supposed to get clouds about lunchtime. Let's go through a trap over here, and we'll come back. Clouds start building, come back. You know what I mean? And you can keep rechecking it because nothing's changed. There's really no reason for those fish to have moved yet, right? There's not a lot of boat pressure in there. The bait's there. The water's still clean. The water temperature didn't drop or lower or anything. Those fish are still there. They're probably they haven't had a reason to leave yet. Whereas if you go back there the next day, the wind's ripping out of there and you don't see the bait, not only did the bait leave, but if the wind's blowing out of the area, that probably means the water's cleaning up. Now the water's too clean. So maybe A, the fish followed the bait, and then B, the fish that are still lingering around, the water's so clean, they're getting a really good look at your flipping jig and they're not going to eat that. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Like, that's a little bit of a both situation there too. But it just goes back to time on the water, on what you're, and it goes back to following your gut too. I've noticed following your gut in this sport is, I talked about it last time. You can't catch other people's fish. If you're not feeling it, you got to abandon ship. You got to. And you got to go fish with what you think is good. And you got to leave when you think you got to leave. Even if part of you, if you're fishing and you're like, I got to stay here. I know they're here, but man, it's 10 o'clock and I haven't had a bite. This is not the deal. This is not, I got to go. More times than not, you should just leave. Pick something. Say, all right, I'm here. I've got these reeds I want to go flip. They're 15 minutes away. Just go. Just go right then. Go, leave. Go do your other thing. Hey, that was me. The dogs are barking. Go do your other thing. Go flip your reeds. Because me and Kelly always say, A, we're either going to go there and it's going to pay off and we're going to catch them, or you go there in zero, which is just as helpful because B, now it's out of your head. Now you go back to that area. It's like, all right, well, my plan B was a dump. It was a waste. And now I'm back here. So now I'm just going to figure them out. I know they didn't leave. So getting something out of your head, for me, at least for me, is just as important as like going somewhere and not, and hey, Don't ever buy a dog. So follow your gut. If your gut says to go there, you got to look at it that way. Go do it, because at the end of the day, if your gut's telling you to go over here and you're fishing here, chances are you're not fishing here right. You're rushing. You're not ticking that grass with that chatterbait. You're working the frog too quick. You're making lazy flips because you think you need to be over here. Go over here, hit it, fish it. You might go in there and never make a cast. You might lay down, oh, the water's filthy, and just come back right to where you were. Now you're going to slow down. You're going to put the power poles down. You're going to say, hey, this trailer's been on here since 1963. I should put a new trailer on. Oh, this hook is straightened out. Let me sit down, let me reorganize, let me redo my stuff, and let me fish this area where I know there's fish. That's why I laid down here in the first place. And now I don't have other things nagging on me what to go check. It's all mental, guys. It's all mental. And the more you can better your mental game and how you look at things or things that give you confidence, it's a big deal. And there was a tip my customer today gave me, like a scenario he ran by me that just made so much sense. And I don't remember what it was, but I like to bounce ideas off of people. And we were talking about like scents, like smelling, like scented baits, and times where it's mad. And he put it to me this way, because in the lakes he fishes, I think it's a lot bigger of a deal. And I'm under the impression where it doesn't hurt. I've seen it where it's made a difference. Now, could it be coincidence? Absolutely. But for me, I've seen it snook fishing. Okay. So a lot of you may be familiar with Procure. It's basically like a jelly, a scented jelly. It's nasty stuff. But I remember I was fishing a bridge in Jupiter one night, and a buddy of mine happened to be there. And me and him spoke. We ended up talking for 2 hours, casting in the same spot, Cato's Bridge on incoming tide, going to Jupiter Island. Incoming tide. I was casting at the east fender. He was throwing at the west fender for literally 2 hours. Throwing white jigs, 60-pound fluoro. I mean, just reeling these flare hawks around. And we were leaving. I said, I'm ready to leave. I said, me too. I said, you know what? And I made a joke. I said, well, now we're going to catch them. I'm going to put Procure on the collar of my flare hawk. And he called me some names I'm not going to repeat and told me I was an idiot. And I threw out there and I caught a slot. We ended up catching 17 snook that night, slaughter oversized on that Procure. What do you think I did? I went and bought gallons of the stuff, told everyone the story, and I've never had it make a difference again. I mean, I've had it help. I've had it help tarpon fishing and with bass. I remember Breezy one time was fishing a Rolla Martin's Classic with her dad. They were in Westwall. They were catching all their fish, flipping a beaver with a punch skirt. Breezy was flipping behind her dad, and she put a scent that we use on her bait, and she outfished her dad that day, more bites, and she caught the 2 7-pounders that got them the big check behind him. And my father-in-law told me, I flipped there with the same bait, penetration sweet beaver, and a black and blue KO punch skirt and a 3/4 ounce weight. And then she flipped the same thing behind me with a scent on it and caught that fish a couple of times. So, and I was telling him this story and things, and my customer said, I think there's time. I don't think it ever hurts. And that's one thing I always tell people. I don't think it hurts. So you can always put it on, and that way you don't have to rethink it. But he said, I think there's times where it makes a big difference, and then I think there's times where it doesn't make a difference at all. And I think that's true. It's like rattles, right? Or rattles in your bait, like a rattle trap. You got silent rattle traps, right? Or there's times where it doesn't matter. You could throw silent, and they're going to eat it. But there's times where it has to rattle, or there's times where they don't want it rattling. So he kind of put it to me like that. Like, there's everything else. It's like a whopper plopper. There's times you could throw it out there and you could chug it. There's times you could just throw it out there and straight reel it. So it's just blah, 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 and they're going to eat it. But then there's times where they'll only eat it if you're stopping it. And there's times where they'll only eat it if you're reeling it. So there's times it matters and there's times it doesn't. And I don't remember where I was going with that either. I get talking about these stories and I can't follow through. So I'm sorry about that. But like with scents, and things like all these little things people ask me, like, does that matter? It's like color. Colors probably times color matters, but yeah, you guys always make fun of me. I say I'm not a color guy. It goes back, and I always try to do stuff that just makes sense. And well, I think I was talking about like confidence. If it feels good, so that's what I was getting at. If it feels good to you to put scent on your bait, do it. Why wouldn't you do it? It's not going to hurt. Do it. You gotta do what feels good to you and makes you fish mentally better. Because if it's like one of those things where if you go, if you're a person who's obsessed with spraying scents on your bait, and you get to the water that day and you open your box and you forgot your spray, your scented whatever, you're probably not going to fish right, because the whole time you're going to think I would have had bites right now if I was using scent, and that goes for a lot of different things. You gotta be, and that's like, we'll go back to this frog again. Killer Gill is the number one color on Lake Okeechobee. They make a color called Killer Gill, Spro does, and it's a great color. But the same reason I flip a dark profile jig is because with it, I'm going to go with this on a jig too. And where I got a snook jig right here. Same thing. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. You're talking about a snook. You're talking about arguably one of the smartest fish in the world, right? But they eat a ball of neon chartreuse hair, ounce and a half head, and a blue tail. It's the same thing with this frog. I think when you throw this frog, I think there's 33% of fit times. Well, I think there's a group of fish that think this is a bluegill. I think there's a group of fish, in my opinion, that think this is a small black bird that's fallen out of a buggy whip nest. That's why I throw black. Everyone asks, well, why don't you throw color gill anymore? Because I've caught them where there's those little oriole birds nesting in the buggies, and I throw the black frog under there, and I catch them. I've physically seen them knocking into the reeds, trying to knock the babies out. I've seen it. I saw it on the south end 2 years ago, and I always remembered it, and I started throwing black. Also, when a bluegill is dying, a lot of times they turn real dark down here. But then the other thing it does is that they just see that silhouette, and I think there's a group of fish that have no idea what this is. Same thing with this. Most areas in the country, when you're flipping a jig, you're trying to make it like a crawfish. Down here, we want it to look like a bluegill, a brim. That's what they think it is. I think there's a big portion of fish that think this is a brim when it's falling. I think there's a big portion of fish that have no idea what this is when they see it. And the same thing goes for a snook jig. All right. Now, they make these in white, red tail, white, blue tail, green. They make them in all different colors. But I think there's a portion of the time where they think it is whatever they think it is. If they're feeding on mullet, right, and they're just eating mullet in the shadow line, and you throw a snook jig in there and it's chartreuse, they might just think it's a funky colored mullet and they'll eat it. But then I think there's other times where they don't know what it is. Like the jig, like this, like the Big Easy when you're just buzzing it across the top at Mach 5. They don't have time to figure out what it is. A chatterbait. There's nothing in nature that vibrates like a chatterbait. Everyone's so big on the jackhammer, what this is, and I throw it too because they suckered me into it, about, oh, it vibrates so much more. Have you ever seen a bluegill literally swimming like it's not. It's subtle. They don't use their whole body when they kick. It's like all the glide baits and stuff. They want the whole bait to swim like this. A fish doesn't swim like that. A fish just, their tail just barely kicks. That's it. That's all it is. Their body doesn't even shimmy. Just the tail. You ever see a bass swim, a shad swim? It's just a very light paddle. They don't know what this is vibrating by them. They don't know what the Big Easy is. They don't know what I think there's a big portion that they don't know. But unlike us, where we can go buy it or catch it, if something was in your house moving, what is that? And you picked it up. They can't. They don't have hands. Their only way to see what the hell it is to stare at. But really, they can't hold it. They got to eat it. They got to put it in their mouth, which is to our benefit. So at the end of the day, all fish are opportunistic feeders for the most point. If it's small enough and it's moving, they don't have the internet. They can't look up a new restaurant. They can't look up a new type of food or a new recipe. So if something's moving and it's small enough for them to eat, I'll feel like a lot of time they're going to eat it or they're going to test it out. like I said, there might be fish that just have no idea. They know it's moving and it's small. So it's probably edible, and they're going to try and eat them. Especially down here in Florida, guys. You guys have all heard it, and everywhere else in the country too. They eat anything down here: turtles, snakes, baby birds, baby gators, all the time. Big lizards, the iguanas. I've fished private lakes over in Boca Raton that you watch bass crash baby iguanas when they get in the water. They eat them. Baby ducks. And at the end of the day, they're not on a set pattern. It's small, it's edible, it's in their way, and they're gonna try and eat it. Especially if they're hungry, it helps. So um, that's why I try not to overthink things. I just try to just fish and put it in front of big fish because I like that variable. Like, yes, if they're eating shad, if they're blowing up on shad everywhere, fisher, and you throw a shad colored swim bait or even a shad colored frog, that bass is probably saying, "Oh, there's a shad," and going and eating it. That's what I just ate 3 of 2 seconds ago, and it's probably gonna end. But I like when I flip or when I throw a dark colored frog, like I like the fact that that fish might not have any idea what this is. Or when you flip this jig and this thing falls by them, they see bluegill every day. Every day. They have a pretty good understanding as to what a bluegill is, right? I mean, if it's a bass that lives in Florida, it spends its life with bluegill surrounding it daily. So they might think this is a bluegill, or again, they might not know what it is, what they even think about the damn thing. But I like that. It gives me confidence that he's going to test it out. And there's times where they hit this jig on the fall and all that, right? Like we want them to. But there's often times where if you watch like Joe Medlock or Brandon Medlock for that matter, that's all they do. I mean, Joe Medlock invented the Medlock jig, and Brandon Medlock, his son, is the Toyota like 5-time champion down here on Toyota Series on Okeechobee. And he makes his money on flipping that big jig. And if you watch him, he literally flips the jig, lets it at the bottom, pulls 3 feet of line off his reel, and just points the rod at the bait and lets it lay there on the bottom. And I think a big point of that is that thing's falling, and that bass is saying, "What on earth?" And it's just laying there. It's big, it's ugly, it's got all these shiny, it's got appendages coming out every which way. And that fish just stares at it like, I don't know what this is, but especially if it's a big fish. A big jig like this might scare away a 1.5-pounder. We catch dinks on them. But if it don't know what it is, it might get the hell out of the way. Whereas an 8-pounder comes up and looks at that. There's only one way to find out and inhales it. So I like that. That gives me confidence when I'm trying certain baits and fishing certain ways. Pretty cool. But I don't know. I think that's it. That was my rant. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but my throat hurts. I need more water. And I need to go to bed. But I appreciate you guys watching. I don't know what I'm going to. My next, I think I might have said this in the beginning of this one too. I don't remember if I did. I started one and I wasn't recording, so I talked for 2 minutes. I don't know if I'm repeating this or not. But I tried to get Breezy to do one, but we were in the woods. So let's go take some lawn chairs out on the dock and we'll do a podcast. And she's just trying to kill this deer. She's in deer mode. She's like, I'm going to mess up. I don't even want to talk about bass fishing right now. But maybe one night this week, if the baby's cooperating, or maybe I'm going to try and get her on the next one. Because like I said, she's got a lot of cool stuff that she keeps saying, I'm retired. I don't fish the lake anymore. I don't even know what's going on out there. But I want to talk to her about certain types of fishing, like I said, that she's experienced that most of us haven't and probably never will. It's pretty cool. And I don't know. I'm going to try and get some other people on here as well, as much as I like just sitting here BSing with you guys. But I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys following the channel. I appreciate you guys being very patient with me when it comes to fishing content. Like the other night, I went back and watched a video that I made to see like how I was catching them in an area. And then I just clicked on some of my stuff and some of my old stuff and just watched it. And I said, man, that's really nice when I'm catching them. I need to, like, I want to, if I could, I'd upload a video every day. But I don't want to upload junk to you guys. I don't want to upload just me catching 8 pounds. And I know there's a lot of you out there that would watch it because the guys I follow, they could talk to me about this fan remote, and I'd watch them just because I like them as people. I like their content. I like the way they explain things. So I know there's a lot of you out there that would watch stuff that was, but I don't, it's not fun for me to edit me catch 8 pounds, and therefore I don't do it. But the next time I go fishing, because I am lacking fishing content so much, the next time I go out, whether I catch 2 or I catch 20, I'm going to put it out. And then hopefully maybe that'll start the little train there where I'll start catching them. So sound like someone was breaking in my house. All right. Well, that's it. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Like and comment anything, any particular topics you guys want me to talk about. Like and comment, or comment whatever it is, and I'll try to get into it. There was some stuff I was going to talk about in this one, but I didn't remember, so I'll do it in the next one. And if you want to book a trip, shoot me a text, give me a call. December's filling up very fast. It is. So give me a call on that. I know the last week of December is totally booked, and I think the middle of it is booked. January and February is great. And then don't sleep on the hot months. End of March, April, and May are great. And on top of that, if you ever want to come down and do some peacock fishing, end of March is when the peacock bass bite turns back on as well. So just keep that in mind. But I'll see you guys on the next one. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you following with the channel. Stay safe out there. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.